Hello Year 10. We move this week from looking at collecting data and types of data to looking at beginning to present and analyse data. And indeed you will have done that in your live lesson last week. Now there's rather a lot of content for your independent work this week, but it is all fairly straightforward and you will have met most of the concepts before. So I trust that it won't take too long to complete. Remember to ask for help if you do need it, however. Nevertheless, I thought it would be useful for me to go through a couple of questions that are likely to come up when we talk about frequency tables, both grouped and ungrouped, and also cumulative frequency graphs. So the first question I've chosen to look through is this one here. The table shows information about the number of goals a team scored in 38 games. And then you can see there they either scored 0, 1, 2 or 3 points, which they're referring to as goals. Nobody scored 4 or more. And the first question asks you to find the median number of goals scored. It tells me there are 38 games, so I am looking for the score of my 38 over 2, so my 19th game. And if I look at my frequencies, 7 scored 0, and then 14 scored 1. Now, remembering that my median is, if I wrote out all of these points in order, so in other words, if I wrote 7 zeros, then 14 ones, and 11 twos, and 6 threes, what would be the middle value? But I can do that a lot quicker, as I say, by knowing that I want my 19th value. Well, I've got 7 here, so it's not in 0, then I get to 21 here. So my 19th value is in 1 goal. So my median is 1 goal scored. Write down the mode. The mode is just the most common, or the most frequent, so the most frequent is also 1 goal with 14 frequency. Work out the total number of goals the team scored in all 38 games. Well, in 7 games they scored 0 points. That's 0 goals in total. In 14 games they scored 1 point. That's 14 goals in total. In 11 games they scored 2 points. That's 22 goals in total. And in 6 games they scored 3 points. That is 18 goals in total. So I've got 14 plus 22, 36, plus 18, 54 goals. So in total they scored 54 goals, giving me the total number of goals scored in all of the games. If instead we're collecting continuous data, we need to group our frequencies together. That is, for example, for height, this is Adam measuring the heights of his tomato plants. We need to write the frequencies down for between 140 up to 150, including 150, then 150 to 160, including 160, and so on. Now, the reason we need to group these together is because otherwise we're going to have data points like 142.2, 148.6, and there's going to be just a frequency of 1 for every single value, because no two values will be exactly identical, although they might be to a certain degree of accuracy. So we group these together instead. And we're asked here to estimate the mean height. Now you know that the mean height is the sum of all of the total values divided by the number of values. Or in this case, the total height divided by the number of heights you have. Estimate is key here because within this 7, I don't know whether all of those are bunched at 140.1 or up at 150. But what I need to assume is that they're evenly distributed. So my average height in this range will be 145. Now that might not be accurate, that's why this is an estimate, but it's the best I can do given the data in front of me. Similarly, I'll have 155, 165, 175, and then this final interval is between 180 and 200, so 190 is my midpoint. That's what we call it, our midpoint. And what I'm going to do to work out my total height, therefore, is I'm going to do 145 times 7, because that's an estimate of the total height of those 7 plants. So I bring in my calculator, 145 times 7 gives me 1,015. 155 times 10 gives me 1,550. 165 times 15 gives me 2,475. 175 multiplied by 19 gives me 3,325, and 190 multiplied by 9 gives me 1,710. And I want to add all of those together to find my total heights, because this is the total height estimated for those 7, total height estimated for those 10, and so on. So my overall estimated total height is 1,710 plus 3,325 plus 2,475 plus 1,550 plus 1,015, giving me 10,075 as my total height. As I said, my mean will be my total height, 10,075, divided by my total number of heights. In other words, I need to add up all of these frequencies. 7 plus 10 plus 15 plus 19 plus 9, which is 60. So I've got 10,075 divided by 60, and it asks me to give my answer to one decimal place. So my mean height is 167.9 centimetres. Then I'm asked to explain why my answer to part A is an estimate. Now, I've already talked about that. There are a couple of things that you could say here. The first thing you could say is that you have assumed that the average height is the midpoint of the interval. So we've assumed that between 140 and 150, those 7 plants have an average height of 145. It's not a bad guess, but it may not be accurate. Similarly, you could say instead that you have assumed that there is an even distribution of heights within the interval. And that's probably what I would end up saying. And all I mean by that is that for every probability there is that a plant is 149 centimetres, it'd be an equal probability that it's 141 centimetres. So it's just another way of saying we're assuming the midpoint is the average value, assuming an even distribution between those two values, or within the interval. The third thing that I want to look at is cumulative frequency. The frequency table shows the time taken for 100 people to travel to an event. You're given some information there. You'll notice it's grouped frequencies again. And you're asked on the grid to plot a cumulative frequency graph for this information. So cumulative frequency is how many up to that point. So if I add another column to my table, cumulative frequency, how many up to 30? And there are 9. But then how many up to 40? Is that 16 plus that 9? They're all below 40. So it's 25. And then how many up to 50 is the 9 and the 16 and the 20, 45. And you'll notice I'm just adding my new number to the previous sum. So 45 plus 29 is 74, plus 15 is 89, plus 11 is 100. And that lets me check my working, because there are 100 people in total. And my cumulative frequency has got to 100. And then I'm asked to plot that cumulative frequency graph for this information. Now I notice first that 20 is my lowest value here, so nobody starts at 20. There are 0 people at 20. And then from my table, up to and including 30, there are 9 people. So I find up to and including 30 and mark 9. Now that's different to what you're used to doing for lots of these graphs, but for cumulative frequency, all I can say is that 9 people were less than or equal to 30, and then 25 were less than or equal to 40. I cannot say anything about my midpoint, so I plot to the extreme value of my interval. So as I say, we had 25 in our table, up to 40. We then had 45 in our table up to 50. So we found 45. We then had 74 up to 60. 74. We then had 89 up to 70. 89. And then up to 80, we had 100 people. And so I'm looking to draw a curve through all of those points. Now this is quite difficult to do whilst on camera. My general advice is to turn your paper around so that your hand curves naturally in the direction you want to go. Now normally your hand curves in one of these 2 directions. But you'll see from my graph I'm expecting a shape that sort of looks like this. So I'm going to turn my paper around until it feels most comfortable to draw my natural shape. And actually that feels pretty good to me. I can take out this curve. So I'm going to do so now. Now of course you would be doing this in a pencil. I'm not doing this in a pen for any reason other than that it shows up better on camera. So I only really have one shot at this. Let's probably not going to be amazing, but let's see. There you go. And so I have joined my points together, and I have my cumulative frequency curve. Now, there is also such a thing as a cumulative frequency polygon, where you would join these points dot to dot, but we weren't asked for that here. So I've joined all of these points with as smooth of a curve as I can generate, and I'm doing pretty well to get very close to my points. That's important for two reasons. First, it's worth a mark, but secondly, it's useful for part B. Find an estimate for the median time taken. The median will be the middle value when I write them all out. So I have 100 as my total number of people, so I need to find the value corresponding to 50. And the value which corresponds to 50 is 52 minutes. Now, in the exam, they will appreciate that your curves will be slightly different, and therefore there will be a tolerance on that final answer. But it will be quite precise. It would normally be like plus or minus half a square, for example, a small square. So it is worth just being careful when you're drawing those curves to make sure they're nice and smooth and they do correspond to your data points. So that's about all we're going to go through today. Good luck.